3 days after their second meeting, Station 9 was still buzzing with talk about the human and the Ravkar warrior. It was no longer just a rumor. It had become a legend. In the crowded markets and narrow corridors, people spoke quietly about how Carter, a human trader, had earned the respect of Voronoc, an apex predator known for crushing his enemies. Carter didn't enjoy the attention. He preferred silence, but wherever he went, whispers followed. Some aliens watched him with new respect, others with fear. A few were simply curious, wondering what kind of being could make a Ravkar hesitate. That night, Carter was back at the Nebula Bar, sitting at his usual spot. The lights were dim, the music soft, and the smell of different alien drinks filled the air. Krell, the bartender, was polishing a row of shining glasses with 2 of his 6 hands, while the others served customers. Carter sat quietly, staring at the golden drink in his hand. He didn't know if Voronoc would return, but part of him expected it. The Ravkar wasn't the type to leave things unfinished. Sure enough, it's not long after midnight. The door slid open. Every head turned. Voronoc entered, his massive frame filling the doorway. The crowd fell silent, just like before, but this time there was less fear. Some even nodded in respect. He walked straight to Carter's table. "Human," he said. "I have come again." Carter looked up calmly. "Didn't think you'd stay away for long?" Voronoc pulled up a chair that creaked under his weight. "You said humans live with fear? You said you build meaning. I wish to see what that means. I wish to understand it not with words, but with action." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Action." Voronoc nodded. "Come with me. To my ship." Krell, listening from behind the counter, froze. "Human," he said quickly. "That may not be wise." But Carter smiled faintly. "It'll be fine," finished his drink, stood up, and nodded to Voronoc. "Lead the way." The Ravkar ship, Bloodfang, was docked in one of Station 9's side hangars. It was a massive vessel, all black armor and red markings, shaped like a hunting bird. Inside, the halls were dim and metallic, the air heavy with the scent of oil and heat. Every step echoed like thunder. Voronoc led Carter through the corridors. The few Ravkar crew members they passed stared in disbelief. A human walking beside their commander. That had never happened before. Finally, they entered a large chamber, part training arena, part meeting hall. The walls were lined with weapons, trophies from hunts across the galaxy. Carter saw claws the size of his arm, skulls from beasts he couldn't name, and strange glowing crystals set into the floor. "This is where my kind train," Voronoc said. "Here, we learn who is worthy to hunt. I will not harm you, human, but I will test you." Carter looked around calmly. "What kind of test?" Voronoc pressed a panel on the wall. From the floor rose 3 hovering drones, each armed with low-power stun beams. "These are Hunter's drones," Voronoc explained. "They track movement, sense heat, and fire without mercy. I will deactivate their killing strength, but they will not stop until one of us disables them." Carter smiled slightly. "You want me to fight them with you?" Voronoc nodded. "Yes, I wish to see how a human hunts." "All right," Carter said, rolling his shoulders. "Let's make it interesting." The lights dimmed. The drones came alive, glowing red, and circling them like mechanical predators. They moved fast, scanning for motion. One darted toward Carter, firing a bright pulse of light. Carter dropped low, rolled across the floor, and snatched up a loose piece of metal pipe from a nearby rack. He swung it, striking the drone midair. Sparks flew as it crashed into the ground. Voronac's eyes gleamed with respect. Fast reflexes. Carter grinned. "You should see me when I'm actually scared." The second drone fired, this time at Voronoc. The Ravkar spun, claws flashing, slicing through the air. The beam missed. He leaped upward, crushing the drone between his massive hands with a metallic crack. The third drone hovered higher, moving unpredictably. Carter ran to the side, ducking behind a metal pillar. "They're learning your patterns," he said quickly. "You need to distract it." Voronoc tilted his head. "You command me?" "Not command strategy," Carter said. "Trust me." The Ravener's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. He stomped loudly on the ground, drawing the drone's attention. The machine turned toward him, sensors glowing bright red. Carter took the chance, running along the side and throwing his metal pipe like a spear. The drone exploded in midair, sparks raining across the floor. Silence filled the chamber. The test was over. Voronak looked at the wreckage, then at Carter. "You think like a hunter," he said quietly. "You use your mind, not your strength." Carter shrugged, breathing a little heavier but still smiling. "Humans had to. Back on Earth, we were never the biggest or the fastest. Just the most stubborn." Voronak walked toward one of the walls and placed his clawed hand on the skull of a massive beast. "You remind me of our ancestors, those who hunted before we had weapons. You fought the universe with nothing but will." Carter nodded. "Maybe that's something all predators share. We just learn to survive differently." Voronak turned back to him. "You speak as though survival is more than instinct." "For humans, it is," Carter said. "We don't just survive to live. We survive to build, to remember, to protect others. That's why we're dangerous, Voronak. We don't fight for sport. We fight for meaning." The Ravkar warrior was silent for a moment. Then he said, "When I first saw you in the bar, I thought you were prey, pretending to be brave. Now I see." "I was wrong," Carter smirked. "I've heard that before." Voronak walked closer. "Your species may be smaller, weaker, but there is something behind your eyes, something even the Ravkar fear. You are not hunters of flesh. You are hunters of the impossible." Carter didn't answer. He just gave a small, knowing smile. Later, back at the Nebula bar, Carter returned to his stool, exhausted but thoughtful. Krell noticed the small scorch marks on his sleeve. "You were with the Ravkar again," the bartender said. Carter nodded. "Yeah, we ran a few tests. Krell's voice rose slightly. "And you came back in one piece?" Carter chuckled. "Mostly." Krell shook his head slowly. "You humans are unbelievable. You make friends with monsters and call it learning." Carter took a sip of his drink. "Monsters are just creatures we haven't understood yet." At that moment, a small group of aliens entered the bar, a few from species that usually kept to themselves. They walked over and offered Carter a nod of respect before finding their seats, Krell noticed. "You see that? They respect you now. Not because you fought, because you stood your ground." Carter looked into his drink. "Respect's nice, but I didn't do it for that." "Then why?" Krell asked. Carter smiled faintly. "Because someone had to remind the galaxy that humans aren't prey." Outside the station's windows, the stars burned bright and endless. Somewhere among them, Voronak's ship was leaving orbit. But before it disappeared, a message came through the station network, addressed to Carter. "Human Carter, you have my respect. You have the respect of the Ravkar. We hunt with strength. You hunt with spirit. Perhaps one day, our kinds will hunt together. Voronak." "Eighth hunt," Carter read the message, smiled quietly, and deleted it. He looked at his reflection in the glass of his drink and said softly, "Guess the galaxy finally met a different kind of predator." The galaxy was vast, and not all creatures followed the rules of neutral zones like Station 9, a few light years away. The Eclipse Raiders, a group of merciless space pirates, had been tracking the Bloodfang Voronak ship. After rumors of a human walking alongside the apex predator spread across the system, the idea of a human surviving a Ravkar test stirred both admiration and envy. And that envy turned dangerous. Back at the Nebula bar, Carter was finishing his evening drink. Krell was polishing glasses, and the usual crowd was settling in for the night. The calm was deceptive. A distant alarm from the station's control tower began to hum softly, barely noticeable over the music. Carter's hand paused over his glass. Something in his instincts told him danger was coming. Krell noticed Carter's expression. "Trouble?" he asked cautiously. Carter didn't answer. Instead, he rose, leaving some credits on the counter. "Stay here," he said softly. "If I'm right, this will get interesting." Voronak's ship had already detected the approaching threat. The Eclipse Raiders were fast, heavily armed, and aggressive. the kind of hunters that only respected power. Voronox stood on the command deck, massive frames silhouetted against the star-filled viewport, eyes scanning the radar feed. "They approach at high speed," said a young Ravkar crew member. "They will not stop until challenged." Voronox growled softly. "Good. Then they will learn what humans can do." Carter, now aboard the Bloodfang, observed quietly. Despite the size difference and alien design of the ship, he felt at home in the command center. His mind was already racing, analyzing the incoming attackers. "Human," Voronox rumbled. "Do you intend to fight them?" "I intend to survive," Carter replied, calm as ever. "And make sure they don't survive either." Voronox blinked, almost amused by the confidence of such a small creature. The Eclipse Raiders struck suddenly. Laser fire filled space like streaks of red lightning, slamming into the hull of the Bloodfang. Alarm sirens blared, lights flashing across the deck. Crew members leapt to their stations. Carter assessed the situation quickly. The Raiders were fast, but not coordinated. Their attacks were strong, but reckless. "They're counting on fear," he said softly. "They think this ship belongs to a single predator. They don't know it carries a human who never panics." Voronox's claws slashed across a control panel, redirecting power to the ship's defensive systems. Shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the incoming fire. The Bloodfang shook violently. Human Voronox growled, "You will need to act now." "I will hold the front." Carter nodded. His mind calculated angles, velocities, and timing. He began issuing precise instructions to the crew. Left turret, aim low, and anticipate their next move. Crew 2 released decoys to distract the closest fighters. Shields lower briefly and draw them in, then redirect with maximum charge. The Ravkar crew, trained in instinct, initially hesitated at Carter's logic-driven commands. But Voronox watched the human closely and gave a deep, approving nod. "Follow him." Carter's plan unfolded perfectly. The Raiders, expecting chaos and fear, were met instead with calculated traps, decoys, and counterattacks. The Bloodfangs seemed to dance through their fire. One of the Raider ships broke formation and closed in on the Bloodfang. Its lasers locked on Voronox, aiming for a strike that could disable the front of the ship. Voronox roared, slashing at the controls. The ship jolted, avoiding direct hits. Human Voronox shouted, "They will flank us." Carter's mind raced. He spotted a narrow path between two asteroids on the radar. "We'll lead them through the field. It's risky, but they won't expect us to use the terrain." Voronox's tail twitched. "Do you dare risk my ship?" "Do you want to win?" Carter replied. "Because this is how we win." With a powerful roar, Voronox powered the Bloodfang forward. Carter guided the ship through the asteroid field with precise instructions. Each turn and dodge calculated perfectly. The Raiders followed blindly, overconfident in their speed and firepower. One ship slammed into a massive asteroid, exploding in a shower of debris. Another got caught in the Bloodfang's redirected shields and spiraled out of control. Within minutes, the remaining Raiders realized they were outmatched, not by brute strength, but by strategy, coordination, and courage. After the battle, silence returned to the command deck. Sparks still fell from minor hull damage, and crew members took deep breaths. Voronox approached Carter, massive and imposing as ever. "You do not fight like a human," Voronox said, his deep voice rumbling. "You fight like a predator of the mind. Your species is remarkable." Carter wiped sweat from his brow and smiled faintly.
"Thanks.
"But I had good partners." Voronox's glowing eyes softened slightly. "You and I make a good team. Perhaps this is what it means to hunt together." Carter chuckled. "Yeah, just don't expect me to wear your claws." Voronox's growl turned almost into laughter, shaking the deck slightly. "I do not need you to wear claws. I need your mind." Later, as repairs were underway, Carter looked out at the stars through the viewport. Krell's warning echoed in his mind, "Humans aren't prey." Carter thought about that. Not just the Racker, but the whole galaxy. Maybe it was true. Humans weren't the fastest. Not the strongest. Not even the most terrifying. But they were unpredictable, resilient, and clever. That combination made them powerful in ways most species could not understand. Voronoc came to stand beside him, massive silhouette in the starry light. "Your kind does not fear," he said. "You build, survive, and learn. You are unlike any other species I have hunted or faced." Carter smiled faintly. "Fear doesn't go away, Voronoc. We just don't let it decide what we do." Voronoc tilted his head. "Perhaps I should teach my hunters this. Perhaps the galaxy will be changed because of you, human." Carter shook his head. "Not me. Humans together. One person alone isn't enough." "Oh." The Ravkar considered that. "Then perhaps we will teach together." And in that quiet moment, the galaxy seemed a little smaller, a little brighter. One human had proven that courage, logic, and quick thinking could match brute strength. One apex predator had learned that survival could come in many forms. The Bloodfang continued its journey through the stars, paired and stronger. Carter, once just a traitor, had become something more. A symbol. Somewhere out in the darkness, other threats would come. But now, Carter was not just a human. He was a strategist, a survivor, a partner to the galaxy's fiercest hunter, and the universe was watching. The stars stretched endlessly outside the Bloodfang, but inside the ship, tension was thick. Carter and Voronoc had been tracking a distress signal from a nearby colony. Reports indicated a group of rogue marauders attacking civilians on a remote mining station. The marauders were known across this sector as ruthless killers, armed with advanced weaponry, fast ships, and no concern for mercy. Voronoc's claws flexed as he read the reports. "They are strong," he said, "and they expect to prey on the weak." Carter adjusted his jacket, his calm expression never changing. "They don't know who we are yet." The Bloodfang slipped through space at full speed. Carter monitored the ship's systems, calculating trajectories and potential ambush points. Voronoc stood beside him, massive and silent, radiating an aura of power that few dared approach. "You trust humans in battle?" the Ravkar asked. "I trust logic," Carter replied. "And humans think fast." Voronoc's glowing eyes focused on the distant stars. "We shall see if your species can hunt as well as they speak." As they approached the mining station, chaos became visible on the monitors. Marauder ships darted around, firing on unarmed structures. Mining bots exploded, alarms blared, and the faint blue lights of the station flickered. Civilians scrambled for cover, helpless against the coordinated assault. Carter turned to Voronoc. "We hit them in pairs. You take the front. I take their back. Cut off escape routes. We move fast. No hesitation." Voronoc inclined his massive head. "Your plan is risky." "Perfect," Carter said with a smirk. "High risk, high reward." The Bloodfang dropped out of warp, appearing behind the marauders. Red alert lights flashed as the enemy ships detected them. Voronoc let out a roar so loud it reverberated through the station, and the front marauder ships hesitated. Carter acted immediately, directing the smaller fighters they had picked up along the way. Carter and Voronoc moved in perfect sync. The marauders were skilled, but not coordinated. Carter's instructions were precise. Flank left. Shields down for 1 second. Fire now. Each move was executed with timing only a species used to thinking faster than its strength could carry it could manage. Voronoc's claws tore through enemy holes. The Ravkar moved with terrifying speed, crushing weapons, disabling engines, and cutting through defenses with raw power. But it was Carter's human ingenuity that turned the tide. Using the station's own mining bots, he created traps, redirecting enemy ships into collisions with each other. Within minutes, the marauders found themselves outmatched, confused, and cornered. A large marauder ship tried to escape, firing relentlessly at the Bloodfang. Carter calculated the trajectory, then redirected Voronoc's path, letting the Ravkar intercept. The massive predator rammed the ship, forcing it into a gravity field created by one of the station's remaining generators. The marauder vessel spun out of control, unable to escape, finally exploding silently against the asteroid field. Carter's heart raced, but his face remained calm. One down. Fewer to worry about. Voronoc's deep growl rumbled through the ship. You anticipate every move. You are no ordinary prey. The battle continued. Carter directed defensive maneuvers, while Voronek struck with precision. Civilians were evacuated using emergency pods, following Carter's instructions over the station's network. Every action they took was careful, deliberate, and efficient. It wasn't just strength saving lives, it was brains, courage, and unity. Finally, only the Marauder leader remained, a towering figure in an armored ship bristling with weapons. Voronek growled. This one is strong. Do you wish to face it alone? Carter shook his head. No. Together. The Bloodfang accelerated toward the Marauder flagship. Voronek's claws raked across its hull, while Carter used the ship's energy systems to overload the enemy's shields. Sparks flew across the viewport. The Marauder's weapons misfired as Carter manipulated the ship's systems. Turning the Marauder's own energy against it, Voronek leaped onto the ship's hull, claws digging into reinforced armor. Carter directed the boarding teams, keeping the Marauder trapped and disoriented. Finally, with a synchronized effort, the Marauder ship was forced to surrender. The station was safe. Civilians cheered, some tears in their eyes. Carter stood beside Voronek on the observation deck, looking at the aftermath. The miners, their families, and station workers were all safe. Thanks to the unusual team, Voronek looked at the human thoughtfully. You are not just brave. You are clever, fearless, and patient. You saved lives today without ever needing to fight alone. You are ... remarkable. Carter smiled faintly. I only did what anyone would do to protect others, Voronek said, his voice low but strong. Most would panic. Most would run. Few would think. Fewer would act with precision under pressure. Humans are not prey. I see that now clearly. Carter chuckled softly, finally admitting it, huh? The Ravkar gave a low rumble that sounded like laughter. Yes. You have earned my respect, human. Perhaps even the respect of my kind. Carter shrugged. Don't tell them too loud. Might make me feel famous. Voronek shook his massive head. Let them know. Let them know what humans are capable of. Let the galaxy remember that courage is not measured by size or strength, but by the heart and mind. Back at Station 9, news of the rescue spread faster than wildfire. Holofeeds displayed Carter and Voronek together, coordinating the defense of the colony. Aliens who had once doubted humans now whispered in awe. The Terran reputation, long underestimated, grew with each retelling. Humans weren't just survivors. They were strategists, heroes, and partners to even the deadliest predators of the galaxy. Carter returned to the Nebula Bar, exhausted but smiling faintly. Krell greeted him with a mix of relief and astonishment. You're still alive. And not just alive, celebrated. Carter waved a hand. It's not about me. It's about what humans can do when we work together. And about what you can do when you listen to the smallest voice in the room? Trell shook his head slowly. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, Carter said quietly, but it's worth it. As he sat down, a soft hum came through the bar's communications panel. It was a message from Voronek. Human Carter, today, the galaxy has seen your courage. Today, your species stands as equals among the strongest. You have my honor and respect. Voronek 8th Hunt. Carter read the message, smiled faintly, and set his glass down. He looked around the bar at the aliens now watching him with respect and curiosity. He whispered softly, almost to himself, guess humans aren't prey after all. And for the first time, the Nebula Bar was filled with a quiet understanding. Humans had shown that strength wasn't just in claws or teeth, but in intelligence, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. The galaxy was vast, full of predators and threats. But if one human could walk with a Ravkar, face impossible odds, and save lives with nothing but wits and bravery, then perhaps humanity had earned a place among the stars that no one could challenge. Carter leaned back in his chair, finishing the last of his drink. Outside the window, stars glimmered like distant fires, endless and beautiful. Somewhere out there, other dangers would come. But for now, humanity had proven itself. The galaxy had witnessed the unexpected. A human who laughed at fear, who fought with strategy, who inspired awe, not through terror, but through heart. And in that moment, even the apex predator Voronoc understood something he had never fully grasped before. The human spirit was not to be hunted. It was to be respected. On the far edge of the Milky Way, far from the shining heart of human civilization, there floated a lonely trade hub called Station 9. It was not grand or beautiful, just a ring of metal drifting in the dark, filled with small shops, fuel depots, and travelers from 100 different species. Most people passed through without remembering its name. But for the locals, it was home, a place where you could find work, food, or a drink after a long haul through cold space. In the lower sector of the station, down a narrow corridor that always smelled faintly of machine oil, stood a small bar called the Rusted Comet. Its light sign flickered weakly, but everyone knew the place. It was safe. Calm, neutral ground. The man who owned it, Elias Grant, was the reason why. He was the only human on Station 9, a retired soldier who had seen more battles than most people had seen sunrises. His hair had turned gray before its time, and there was a deep scar that ran across his cheek like a mark left by lightning. But his eyes were calm, not cold. It's just watchful, the eyes of someone who understood both peace and danger. Every night was the same. The door would open, and aliens from all corners of the galaxy would come in, miners from the Varan Belt, pilots from the Sol System, even a few of the gentle, jelly-like Kelter who floated in air instead of walking. They drank, played holocards, and told stories about trade routes, cosmic storms, and sometimes about the strange race called humans, the ones who had climbed from a single blue planet and dared to face the stars. Elias never said much during those stories. He would smile, clean a glass, and listen quietly. He didn't need to prove anything. The galaxy had already learned what humans could do. That night, however, was different. The Rusted Comet was busy. The hum of laughter filled the air, and soft music played from an old Terran jukebox Elias had rebuilt himself. The lights were dim, and the smell of sweet spice and metal filled the air at the far table. A group of small furry traders called the Creve were laughing about a human legend. They say humans can survive vacuum for 5 seconds. One said, "That's impossible," another replied. "No creature can live without air." Elias chuckled quietly behind the counter. "Not true," he said, his voice calm and low. "But we do try to hold our breath longer than most." The Creve laughed, shaking their small heads. They liked Elias. He never lied, never bragged. Just worked, listened, and made sure no one caused trouble. He was wiping down the counter when the bar's main door hissed open. The laughter stopped. Even the music seemed to fade. The figure that entered was taller than any species, present almost touching the ceiling. Thick armor covered its body, black and silver, and strange runes glowed across its surface. Its helmet had red eyes that burned like coals, scanning every living being in the room. The air itself felt heavier. Someone whispered Zarn. The word alone was enough to drain all color from the faces around. The Zarn. Editors were hunters from the outer systems, a warrior race who lived for combat. They saw strength as honor and weakness as shame. Entire worlds had fallen to their hunts, where they tested themselves against any species that dared stand in their path. They were not criminals. They were worse. They were conquerors who didn't understand peace. The Predator stepped forward, his footsteps making the floor plates groan. He carried a long spear made of black alloy, pulsing faintly with energy. His armor bore scars, signs of many victories. Ilias's hands stopped moving. He set the glass down carefully. He knew trouble when he saw it. The Predator's voice came through a translator on his armor, deep and metallic. "Who here calls themselves the strongest?" No one answered. Even the tough Varan miners turned their eyes away. The Creve trembled under their table. The silence was sharp, stretching across the bar like a knife's edge. The Predator's gaze finally landed on the human behind the counter. "You," he said, stepping closer. "Are you human?" Elias met his stare. "I am," he said quietly. The Predator tilted his head. "Interesting. I've never hunted one of your kind before." There were gasps around the room. One of the Varans whispered, "He's challenging him." The Predator's kind didn't speak for fun. They only spoke before a fight. Elias let out a slow breath. He looked at the alien, at the armor, the scars, the glowing eyes, and then at the rest of the frightened customers. He didn't want this fight. Not here. Not in his bar. "Friend," he said calmly, "you're welcome to a drink. But there's no fighting here. This is neutral ground." The Predator laughed, a sound like metal scraping stone. "No fighting? Then what is the point of being alive?" He slammed his spear into the floor. The lights flickered. The crowd backed away fast, knocking over chairs and spilling drinks. The Predator was baiting him, testing him. Elise's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't raise his voice. "Put that weapon down," he said. "Last warning." The Predator leaned forward, towering over the counter. His red eyes flashed. "You dare command a Zarn?" Without waiting for an answer, the alien reached forward and grabbed one of the metal stools beside the counter. With one motion, he crushed it in his hand. The sound of twisting steel filled the bar. The customers fled toward the back exit. Only Elias stood still. His reflection glimmered in the Predator's armor, small compared to the towering figure, but steady as a mountain. He spoke again, his tone quiet but firm. "Leave now, before someone gets hurt." The Predator paused, confused for half a second. Most creatures begged or ran. Humans, he realized, were different. He chuckled lowly. "You think you can stop me, human?" Elias shrugged. "I don't think. I know." The room went silent again. The tension was heavy, like the air before a storm. For a long moment, the Predator stared into Ilias's calm eyes. There was no fear there, no hesitation. Just the tired confidence of someone who had already faced death many times and stopped counting. The Predator tilted his head again, as if studying an interesting specimen. "Perhaps tonight, I will learn why the galaxy whispers about your kind." And with that, he turned away from the door and walked deeper into the bar. Chairs broke under his feet as he moved, each step echoing like thunder. Elias sighed softly, glancing at the broken stool, then at the shattered bottles around. He didn't move yet. He knew how these creatures worked. They didn't want peace. They wanted proof. Proof of strength. The rest of the aliens hid in the corners, whispering prayers or recording the scene through small holocoms. They all expected one outcome, that the human would be crushed. Another warning to never cross the Zarn. But Elias wasn't thinking about winning or losing. He was thinking about the promise he made when he opened this bar, that it would be safe for everyone, no matter their species. He looked down at his old hands and smiled slightly. Guess peace never lasts forever. He reached under the counter and quietly unlocked a hidden compartment. Inside lay a simple old weapon, a Terran pulse baton, worn and scratched from years of use. It was powered down, but it still worked. He hoped he wouldn't have to use it tonight. The Predator reached the center of the room and turned around. "Prepare yourself, human. I will not hold back." Elias straightened slowly, his face calm, his heart steady. The others had already run, but the station cameras would record everything. Somewhere, someone would tell this story, as the red lights of the Predator's armor glowed brighter. Elias whispered under his breath, "Then I guess the night just got interesting." The heavy silence in the rusted comet felt like a living thing. Every light flickered, every shadow seemed to breathe. The air recyclers hummed in the background, but even their soft sound could not cover the tension building between. It's Elias Grant and the towering Zarn Predator, who now stood at the center of the ruined bar, outside the cracked windows. Faint blue lights of Station 9's traffic lanes glowed, cutting through the dark like slow-moving stars. The rest of the customers had escaped through the back corridor, whispering warnings to the security teams. None of them dared stay. Only Elias remained, standing behind the counter. A single man facing a creature twice his size and bred for war. The Zarn's name was Vortek, and his armor still carried dust from the dead world of Theros, a place he had conquered alone. Among his people, his name was spoken with respect and fear. He had faced hunters, soldiers, Beasts beyond reason, but never a human. Vortex's deep metallic voice echoed through the bar's speaker system. Human, he said, stepping forward slowly. I came here seeking challenge. You will not refuse me. Elias didn't move. His calm voice cut through the air like a steady line. I don't want trouble. You can take a drink and leave. Vortex let out a short laugh, low and harsh. Take a drink. I did not travel across systems for that. He pointed his massive spear toward Elias. They say your kind fights with fire in their veins. I wish to see that fire. Elias's jaw tightened. He could see the spear's tip glowing faintly, a small power cell building energy for a strike. His years in the military had trained him to read movements, measure distance, and predict attacks. Even without his old armor, even without a weapon in his hand, he could still feel the rhythm of danger. He slowly placed the glass he was cleaning onto the counter and spoke, his voice steady. Last warning. Put the weapon down, and we'll forget this. Vortex's glowing eyes narrowed. You threaten me? Elias shook his head. No, I'm giving you a chance. That was when the predator lunged. The spear sliced through the air like lightning. It struck the counter with a loud crack, splintering wood and sending shards flying. The entire bar trembled under the impact. Bottles shattered and liquid spread across the floor, forming tiny reflections of red and blue light. But Elias had already moved. He slid to the side just before the strike landed, his boots making no sound on the metal floor. He grabbed a stool and swung it in one clean motion, striking the spear's shaft to deflect it. The force pushed the weapon away, and the predator stepped back, surprised. Vortex tilted his head, a hint of respect flickering behind his glowing eyes. Fast, very fast. Elias said nothing. He stepped away from the counter, placing himself in open space. His movements were calm, precise, no wasted motion, no panic. He had fought machines, raiders, and things that didn't even have names. This was just another night, Vortex growled. You are small, but your eyes do not fear me. He swung his spear again, a wide arc aimed at Elias's chest. The air itself seemed to bend around the weapon's energy field. Elias ducked low, rolled to the side, and grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the floor. It wasn't much of a weapon, but in human hands. It was enough. He waited until Vortex turned his body for another strike. Then Elias moved. He slammed the pipe against the alien's armored knee joint. Sparks flashed as metal met metal. The predator roared, staggering half a step back. Elias didn't stop. He struck again, fast, hard, focused. Each movement was clean, deliberate. His face stayed calm, his breathing steady. The predator was stronger, heavier, and covered in advanced armor. But Elias had something else. He had patience. Vortex lifted his spear high, shouting through the translator. You fight like your soldiers, cold and precise. But you forget one thing. Human. I was born for battle. The predator slammed his foot down. The ground shook, knocking Elias off balance for a split second. In that moment, Vortex swung the spear again, this time hitting Elias across the side. The impact threw him against the wall with a loud bang. Glass fell from the shelves and the lights flickered out for a moment. The predator stepped closer, his heavy armor making the floor plates groan. Is that all your kind has to offer? Elias coughed once, pushing himself up slowly. His ribs ached and his shoulder burned, but his eyes stayed clear. He looked up at the massive alien and replied softly, Not even close. Then, with one sharp motion, he reached behind the counter and pulled out the pulse baton, the old Terran weapon he had kept hidden for years. Its surface was scratched, but the small blue power light still glowed faintly. Vortex paused. A toy? He asked mock NGOY. Elias flicked the switch, and the baton hummed with low energy. Something like that, he said. The next few seconds were chaos. The predator lunged again, spear spinning with blinding speed. Elias met the strike halfway. The baton and spear clashed with a flash of blue light. The energy feedback cracked the floor beneath them. Sparks filled the air. Elias sidestepped, twisted, and drove the baton into Vortex's side. The alien growled, armor sparking as circuits overloaded. Elias struck again, hitting the same spot. His movements were like a rhythm hit: dodge, strike, retreat. The predator roared and swept his spear in a wide circle. The shockwave blew apart what was left of the tables. Elias ducked under it, slid forward, and hit the alien's wrist. Forcing him to drop the weapon, Vortex stepped back, stunned by the sheer precision. "You fight without fear." "Why?" Elias answered quietly, circling him. "Because I've already seen worse." The predator's eyes flared red, fury rising. He lunged bare-handed, swinging massive fists. Each punch could break metal. But Elias dodged narrowly each time, countering with sharp, calculated strikes to the armor's weak points. The fight wasn't just muscle. It was skill, experience, and instinct. Elias fought like someone who had spent a lifetime studying danger. Finally, Vortex caught Ilias's arm mid-swing and threw him across the room. Elias crashed into a broken table, gasping for breath. His baton skidded away across the floor. Vortex stepped forward slowly, heavy boots echoing. "You have spirit, human, but spirit cannot defeat strength." Elias wiped the blood from his lip and smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but it can outlast it." As the predator raised his arm for the final strike, Elias rolled aside, grabbed a broken metal tray. The tray hit one of the predator's shoulder vents, releasing a burst of smoke. The armor's internal system flickered, and the predator stumbled slightly. Elias moved in close, grabbed the fallen baton, and drove it into the predator's exposed chest plate. The pulse weapon flared bright, releasing a burst of electrical energy. Vortex roared. Falling to one knee, his armor crackling, Elias stepped back, breathing heavily, his hand steady on the baton. The bar was filled with smoke and flickering light. For a moment, both of them stood still, two figures outlined in the dim light. One was a creature born for war. The other, a man who had seen too many wars, but still refused to fall. Vortex finally spoke, his voice lower, softer now. "You fight with purpose. You do not kill for pride." Elias nodded. "No, I fight to protect." The predator looked down at his damaged armor and let out a sound half growl, half laugh. "Then you are not prey. You are a warrior." Elias relaxed slightly but kept his guard up. "Are we done here?" Vortex's eyes dimmed for a moment. He nodded slowly. "For now, but I will remember this night." The predator turned toward the door, his armor still sparking. As he left, the heavy door slid shut behind him, leaving only silence and the faint hum of broken lights. Elias stood in the middle of the wreckage, the smell of burnt metal filling the air. He looked around at his ruined bar and sighed softly. "Guess I'll need new tables again." He sat down on one of the unbroken stools, his breath slowing, and poured himself a small glass of water outside. Station 9's security drones finally arrived, scanning the hallway for signs of the intruder. But the battle was already over. Inside the bar, the lone human sat quietly, still standing in spirit, calm, steady, and unshaken.